Hello friends, I hope you are not tired of this subject, but the information that is coming out is extremely important and would have repercussions for all humanity, for all humankind, since the president is the only obstacle that stands in the way of the globalist agenda. This article has gone on longer than I would have liked, but it has been unavoidable because the abundance of information, despite the fact that I have summarized it as much as possible. Opinion article. The challenge moves forward. The legal battle is getting hotter every day. Rumors of a Republican victory in Pennsylvania. There are legal efforts to challenge the vote count. The results will start coming in the next week. The White House announces great progress following the allegations. There are 4 states in dispute and 2 others with many anomalies. Illegitimate votes were monitored by satellites in real time. FoxNews cuts off the live broadcast at the White House spokesperson. Change of resignations following the removal of the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper. Oregon Election Directorate fired for reporting several problems. Republicans won a lawsuit in Pennsylvania and lost in Michigan. States have until December 8 to resolve electoral problems. Judicial Observatory finds 1 million ghost votes in 29 states. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the first congresswoman to believe in conspiracy theories. Let's start. The current US president said on Tuesday that a breakthrough has been made in the fight to challenge the election results. The president has announced on his Twitter account that great progress has been made after denouncing alleged electoral fraud in the presidential elections of last week, and has assured that next week the results will begin to be known without offering any further details. We are making great progress. The results will start coming in next week. Let's make America great again, the president wrote. Let's win, he added. Pennsylvania. An official news says that the Democrats would have lost 20 electoral votes in Pennsylvania, and they would remain at 264 electoral votes, which would make the old candidate lose the denomination of winner. And there is even talk of Michigan losing and the Republicans winning. But although this information is probable, I have no official confirmation of this news, and therefore I do not dare to throw the bells in the air. The Republican campaign has filed a lawsuit against Pennsylvania two-tier election system, claiming that the election process violated the Constitution by creating different standards of verification and transparency for people who voted by mail in person. In a November 9th statement, the Republican campaign said the two-tier system violated the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause and Elections and Voters Clauses. Republicans won a lawsuit Thursday in Pennsylvania to get a closer look at the count, but lost in Michigan. It was the first lawsuit to challenge the vote count in several key states, with a court decision that allowed observers from his team to monitor more closely the vote count in Pennsylvania. However, a Michigan Court of Appeals, Judge Cynthia Stevens, ruled against the president's campaign lawyers. The clerks asked Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson to order local election officials to allow contestants to meaningfully participate in and supervise the voting and counting process. States have until December 8th to resolve election issues, including recounts and legal battles. Members of the Electoral College will meet on December 14th to finalize the result. Simon Parkes. The British insider Simon Parkes revealed on Monday that two generals are working undercover to shed light on electoral corruption, and that there are federal guards in 16 states. There is also a military team with very sophisticated special equipment operating in those states. The army has the power to break up this alleged fraud. It adds that all legitimate votes were monitored by satellite in real time and sent to a ground data center at two military bases, but when in doubt, the court will ask for a manual recount under strict surveillance by armed agents to supervise the recount. They are said to have activated a computer patch before the machines started working to give false result. That leaves Nevada, North Carolina and Michigan. The problem in these states is not so much the corrupt votes, but rather the corrupt people, with 30 or 60 truck drivers who were pressured to alter votes, making thousands of dead people vote electronically, which would be very easy to confirm. On November 7th, a specialized member of the National Guard conducted an audit of the votes in several key states using the quantum computer. These official ballots were printed with a certain watermark by Homeland Security. This audit verified that the president would have won this election by more than 80% of the votes. The smart paper used for the legitimate ballots came from a single vendor, but was printed in different states. The paper itself has a quantum watermark, which is a digital signature that has a serial number that can be tracked from a satellite. The quantum computer operates at 1 billion images per second. The quantum computer counted the legitimate votes and discarded the false votes, and 100% of the false votes went to whom we already know. Defense. The Republicans intensified their efforts to overturn the Democratic candidate's victory in the 2020 elections, refusing to acknowledge the defeat of the Republican Party, as the president-elect moved more strongly to make the transition to the White House. The evidence they have is said to be so overwhelming that they even have hidden camera recordings. The White House will not clear the paperwork to give the administration's seal to approval of the alleged president-elect and allow this transition team to work fully with federal agencies while the legal battle over the vote count rages in several states. Judicial Watch was found 1.8 million phantom voters in 29 states and warns on dirty elections. Meanwhile, the Senate is preparing for fights over the border wall money. More than 60 complaints from U.S. Postal Service and state election workers signed affidavits attesting the fraudulent interference with the ballot. Thousands of dead people in 12 battleground states with birth dates dating back to the 1820s voted in the election. Results. A group of Los Angeles lawyers recently said this goes to the Supreme Court to rule that the election is invalid due to fraud and errors on a national scale. It would be one of two ways: Either they would rule that all absentee ballots would be unconstitutional and would have to be counted without them, or they would simply rule that the election was invalid due to massive voter fraud. According to Don Carlos de Marbella, 9 states had more votes than population. 1,000 of votes from deceased people had been introduced. The smart paper of the ballots was so programmed that if someone changed their vote, the computer would pick it up. The main media would be the last to be eliminated. The first thing to be seen is the elimination of the media license. Several editors and high-profile journalists would be arrested for reporting things that they knew were not true. From 21st December 2018 until now, the state's grand juries of first instance have met in secret in all 94 judicial districts. More than 209,000 sealed indictments have been filed against political and global elites in federal courts across the country. Utah Attorney General John Hubbard and his 174 investigators have been busy since their appointment by the president just after he took office in 2016. Decision of the public prosecutor. The most significant measure came from the Attorney General William Barr, who on Monday authorized Justice Department officials to open investigations into possible irregularities in the presidential election, although he acknowledged that there is no conclusive evidence. Barr received coverage from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who gave a speech early Monday saying the president is 100% within his rights to question the election results. The Attorney General's announcement came after meeting with the Senate's leading Republican on the U.S. Capitol. In recent days, there have been a number of complaints and computer glitches with the software used Dominion, also called the Gable, that are turning the results around in some of the 4 states in dispute and the over 2 that have open lawsuits. The Justice Department said neither the President nor anyone in the White House has asked William Barr to take action, but some Republican lawmakers recently signed a letter asking him to intervene. The President's refusal to budge has also stalled the legal transition process. He said he is emboldened by his chance for a second term. "We will win," he tweeted on Tuesday morning. Resistance. The 2020 elections will be remembered forever as a real presidential race where there were big surprises at last-minute percentages. The president believes that some of the people in charge of counting the votes are thieves, and that the machines in some cities where he lost are corrupt. The election was stolen, he said. "We think these people are thieves," he said, "and the machines in the big city are corrupt. This was a stolen election." The best pollster in Britain wrote that it was clearly a stolen election, that it's impossible to imagine that the Democratic candidate beat Obama in some of these states. The president did not concede defeat and reported an alleged fraud committed during the vote count. He said on Saturday that he won the presidential elections with 71 million legal votes, shortly after several media outlets gave his rival the victory. The current president was denounced that Republican observers were not allowed to attend the vote count. In addition, the president declared that these elections are far from over and announced that his campaign will take the fraud to court. Gateway Pundit reports that the president is winning the election according to Electoral College data. White House Press Secretary Khalid McEnany showed Sean Hannity 234 pages of affidavits about voter fraud. Rudy Giuliani tweeted very early on November 11th about the affidavits. You will be surprised, he said. Legal term. The president and his supporters have until December 8th to complete any legal challenges. That is the so-called safe harbor days for states' voters to be automatically accepted by Congress. Prior to William Barr's intervention, several lawsuits were dismissed in Pennsylvania, Nevada, Michigan, Arizona, and Georgia, all of which were states where Democrats have an advantage. The public face of the effort has been Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal lawyer, who criticized media organizations for projecting the elderly man and the winner over the weekend. In a series of press conferences organized by Republicans' allies since the race was called on Saturday, the Republican Party said on Monday that they were filing complaints about voting irregularities. If you find these irregularities, if you are told to back up the ballots, that's a problem. We are going to pursue all of this, said Republican National Committee Chairman Ronna McDaniel. McConnell also refused to recognize the Democratic victory. All legal ballots should be counted. All illegal ballots should not be counted, McConnell said in the Senate. The process must be transparent. Republican support. High-level Republican legislators said that they were willing to allow the president to present his challenges. When asked if he saw evidence of improper voting or tabulation, Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn said that is the responsibility of the Republican campaign. In the end, they are going to have to come up with some facts and evidence, Cornyn said. But that's not my job. That's your campaign's job. Only 4 Republican senators have publicly acknowledged the Democratic candidate's victory. Susan Collins of Maine, Mitt Romney of Utah, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Ben Sasse of Nebraska. Former Republican President George W. Bush Jr. also spoke to the elder and congratulated him on his alleged election. McConnell began to make headway against the Democrats' hopes that a stimulus bill could be passed before the new Congress and administration are in place, providing economic support for states and cities affected by the health crisis. The incumbent Republicans in the race, David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, made it clear that they were sticking to the president's insistence that he won, attacking the state's Republican election official and demanding his resignation for not offering honest and transparent elections. On Tuesday, November 3rd, U.S. citizens went to the polls to elect 435 representatives to the House, 35 senators out of 100 to the Senate, and the President and Vice President. Although the vote recount is still underway, major media reports project that the Democratic contender allegedly won the presidential election. However, the incumbent president is challenging the media result alleging irregularities in ballot processing in key states, and has filed lawsuits to defend his case in court. A software that changes votes. Another of the ways they have been trying to prove since the Trump campaign, with an army of volunteers ready to do whatever it takes not to have a communist government in their words, is that the Democrats used software that allegedly changed the votes in some 30 states, among them Nevada, Arizona, Minnesota, Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. There is a software called Dominion that they have used to change the president's votes in favor of the old man, the Republicans say. That complaint was also made by the Republican National Committee chairman, Ronna McDaniel, after a human error in Michigan. With that software caused many votes to be switched. Despite official sources, the campaign worker has no confidence in the established power and hopes the president will finally be re-elected for a second term starting in January. Until then, they will work without rest. Resignations and dismissals. The Pentagon's chief policy officer, James Anderson, has resigned. His departure as acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Policy paves the way for the appointment of Anthony Tata, the president's controversial nominee for the post. The head of election crimes at the Department of Justice, Richard Pilger, has also resigned after Attorney General William Barr made a decision to allow prosecutors to investigate allegations of election fraud. Pilger was director of the Department of Justice Election Crimes Section. Oregon election director fired for reporting election problems. Oregon's election director was abruptly fired in a text message by the Secretary of State after pointing out serious problems with aging and vulnerable technology for conducting elections. Stephen Truth learned in a text message Thursday night that election officials in his department and the county were still counting the votes. Curious news. From January, the U.S. Congress will face its first congresswoman to openly join to the anonymous movement which promotes conspiracy theories. By winning a seat in the lower house from Georgia, Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene became the first legislator to declare her faith in the famous leader, a group formed on internet forums. The president shrewdly avoided talking about conspiracies at the time, stating that the important thing is that the supporters of this movement like him very much. For his part, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said on Tuesday that his administration has not yet finished with China, a country that faces sanctions and harsh criticism from Washington, among other things, for accusation of undermining the autonomy of the former British colony of Hong Kong and for violating human rights. Censorship in Fox News. The US channel Fox News interrupted the transmission of a press conference by the White House spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany when she accused of alleged fraud and illegal voting in the elections. We want maximum transparency. We want every legal vote counted, declared McEnany, who had previously accused the Democratic Party of stealing the election when presenter Neil Cavuto made the cut. I think we have to be very clear, he said. She is accusing the other side of approving the fraud and approving the illegal vote, he said. Unless I have more details to back that up, I cannot continue to show this in good spirits. This is not the first time since the election was held on November 4th that NBC anchor interrupted the president's election night speech to say that some of the statements he was making were false, supposedly. That's all for today, and thank you very much for your patience.